Curry Barker's Obsession is a masterclass in the be careful what you wish for subgenre, but it swaps out the dusty irony of old school morality tales for something far more modern and predatory. It's a film that lives in the uncomfortable silence between a crush and a fixation. From the jump, Barker establishes a world that feels tactile and lived in. The hum of a musical instrument store, the awkward cadence of a guy who can't get out of his own way. Only to systematically dismantle that reality with a supernatural glitch that is as physically repulsive as it is psychologically haunting. It doesn't just ask for what you do for love, it asks what you're willing to ignore to keep it. Thematically, the film is a searing autopsy of the nice guy entitlement. On the surface, Bear is our underdog protagonist, but the narrative functions as a forensic deconstruction of that very trope. It explores the horror of lost agency, the idea of being a passenger in your own skin, and serves as a visceral, supernatural metaphor for the way toxic power dynamics can override a person's identity. The one wish willow at the center of the plot isn't a magical solution, it's a mirror. The film moves with a monkey's paw logic where the horror stems from the literalism of the universe.
Nice hot mustard with bread. Turkey's a little dry. The turkey's a little dry. Oh, foul accursed thing! What demon from the depths of hell created thee?
By the time we reached a climax, the film stripped away the romantic veneer to reveal something much darker, a tragedy of isolation where every shortcut to happiness leads directly into a permanent screaming silence. It's a gut-wrenching look at how the desire to be loved can transform into a desire for control, and how that transformation is the ultimate point of no return. Now, I was curious about this. There was a ton of buzz coming out from the festival circuit, and hopefully I get invited to a festival circuit sometime to create this buzz too. But and so I went on YouTube to watch his first short just last week, Milk and Cereal, and I thought it was pretty good. I mean, especially for something at an $800 budget. He goes from that to this, which is like a $15 million focus features deal. That career trajectory is just insane, but probably inevitable. Now, I've got to say it, like these YouTubers who went first into comedy, they know how to make horror movies. We're talking about the Philippou brothers. We're talking about Curry Barker here. Maybe the people who are game streamers and just YouTube movie reviewers don't make good movies. But I think, comedy has a lot to do with timing, and so does horror. Those two genres really have a lot in common. You're eliciting emotion from your audience in one way or another, even though they're probably two ends of the spectrum. And I got to put Zach Kreger on there too, even though he wasn't really a YouTube guy. But they know, these comedy guys that come from comedy know how to make great horror. They know how to weaponize an audience expectations against them. And it's kind of funny because I saw this was slapped with the NC-17 rating, and I don't want to spoil anything, but this movie isn't like particularly violent or gory, except for maybe one scene that they had to cut down for the mean-spirited glee that happens in the latter half. So Michael Johnston plays Bear, and I think the acting in here was fantastic. He captures that specific brand of shyness and anxiety of the fear of rejection, but then later on, just pure fear. That's one of the things I really love about this is like, you're really pulling for Bear in this, but it seems like the direction it takes in the eventual maybe violation of Nikki's agency, it feels like a betrayal of the audience trust. And I like that. I like that little flip it does. Even though he is confused by the situation and is probably hoping for the best, it's not just cut and dry. And we got to talk about Inde Navarrette's performance as Nikki. It's not just like scary acting, which she is phenomenal with. It's like a physical manifestation of like a biological system error. It's like she's not in control of her own body and just glitches, and you get to see moments of the real Nikki it's terrifying and disturbing. But her as this sort of possessed woman who's obsessed with Bear, she puts on a great, just both physical and terrifying performance. There's like a part towards the end where she's like walking backwards, like she's being rewound, and then she's like standing in the shadow. And I got to give it to her performance and also Barker's framing and just, oh, it's just like visceral, uncomfortable, and just it's cinematic. And when I say that it's going against her agency, like she's stuck in a body that she's not in control of, you see these glitches in here, and you can see like the real Nikki trying to crawl out sometimes. And it's like the first time it happens is probably one of the best jump scares I've ever had in a theater. I was sitting between two adults who were both jumping out of their seats. And this one really got us. But yeah, this movie is just so layered too, because I'm talking about her not having agency, and it's like you think it's about Bear and this crazy woman that he's with, but actually it's a lot of the horror is about a woman trapped in a body she has no control over. It's almost body horror in a way. It's a two-way horror. It's almost like a disturbing sexual assault allegory that hits like a freight train once you see what's going on with her. I gotta shout out Andy Richter. Andy Richter plays a small role in this. If you're a fan of the original Late Show with Conan O'Brien. But yeah, this whole movie feels very lived in. It feels very realistically middle class young adults. He's living in his grandma's house, old CRT TV. Everything's kind of like a brownish, yellowish hue. It feels a lot like It Follows in a way. But I got to give it to Curry Barker. He's a fantastic director. You get this aesthetic shift through the film that is like a slow, deliberate tightening of the noose. I mean, he goes from like the indie romance look of the opening for these like clinical, suffocating still frames, and they use like a center composed shots with an impressive amount of headspace above the character's head, making it feel like the actors are being physically crushed by their environment. And score mirrors this descent, transitioning from melodic acoustic warm to a low frequency industrial thrum that feels less like music and more like a biological warning system. But I really want to talk about the ending. I want to just go through it. If you don't want to know about the ending, you can go to the chapter below to see my final thoughts and score. You won't want to miss that. So she makes the wish and she falls in love with him. And, throughout the second act, whenever we're seeing like Nikki kind of glitching, screaming at corners or contorting her limbs, she's never reflected clearly. I think this is showing that Nikki is no longer present in the physical plane. She's a passenger in a hijacked vehicle. And I think that's one of the ultimate horrors in this is like the internal prisoner. We have a scene where she's asleep, the possessed Nikki, and the real Nikki claws through for, in the middle of the night while the obsessed Nikki is asleep, like begging Bear to kill her. I think it's like the most honest moment in the film. It almost frames Bear as, not a victim of the monkey's paw curse, but as a captor. Then you had the friends, like it's sort of a subplot with Ian and Sarah. They're friends. Ian is the cynic archetype who treats the supernatural like a joke when he mockingly wishes for $1 billion. The film doubles down on its literalism theme. And it doesn't appear in his bank account. It just like physically rains down on both of them. The film is telling us that human language is too clumsy for the universe. We say, I want to be rich or I want to be loved, but we don't account for the physics of those states. Ian's death, Ian becomes a billionaire and is shot by Nikki. I think Ian's death is like the economic irony that sets up the stage for Bear's final realization. You can't shortcut your way to a meaningful life without destroying the very things that make life worth living. And Sarah's murder is a turning point for the nice guy facade finally cracks. Bear watches the woman he loves turn into a blunt instrument of murder. He realizes he didn't just wish for a girlfriend, he wished for a monster that would clear a path for his own obsession. And then we get like sort of Lord before all that, where he tries to fix that with a second wish, but the shop clerk tells him that it's only a one-shot deal. You get one wish for one life. The universe doesn't give you a redo on a soul level violation. The only way to break the spell is for the source of the wish, the wisher, to die. And Bear's decision to overdose isn't like a hero sacrifice. It's like the final act of a coward who can't live with the silence. But then the movie pulls the rug out while Bear is fading and then trying to throw up the pills he took. Nikki, or we'll call her Glitchy, predator entity that the wish turned her into snaps a second willow. She wishes for Bear to love her as much as she loves him. The snapping up of Bear in his final moments is a romantic awakening. It's his brain being rewritten in real time. The mutual love they share in those last 60 seconds is a closed loop of pure artificial madness. There are two puppets whose strings are now tangled together. It's the performative romance taken to its logical, violent extreme. Then the clock runs out, the pills kick in, and Bear's heart stops, and because the wisher is dead, the spell on Nikki shatters instantly, right before she's about to shoot herself. The ending is a masterclass in nihilism. Nikki wakes up holding the cooling corpse of the man who ruined her life, surrounded by the bodies of her best friends. The horror of lost agency hits its peak here. She remembers everything. She remembers the feeling of her skull being a passenger while her hand slammed Sarah's head into the steering wheel in a brick. The film argues that the most profound isolation isn't being alone, it's being the only one left alive who knows the truth of a nightmare. Bear got to die in love and delusional. Nikki has to live with his gift. And, some of the themes of it. The nice guy trope, as I've mentioned before, Bear views himself as a victim because Nikki doesn't really notice him romantically, despite him being loyal and sweet. By wishing for Nikki to love him, Bear bypasses her agency and consent and doesn't want Nikki as a person. He wants the feeling of being loved by her. And the film argues that the forced affection is not love, it's a form of imprisonment. Bear's innocent crush revealed to be a selfish desire for control. I think the most visceral horror in the movie isn't the gore, but the loss of self. The scene where the real Nikki briefly resurfaces to beg for death are central to this theme. It explores the terrifying idea of being a passenger in your own body while your hands commit acts you find abhorrent. It serves as a supernatural metaphor for how people in toxic or controlling relationships can feel their identity being overwritten by the needs and demands of their partner. And, the monkey's paw aspect of it all, the film plays with the philosophical idea that humans are incapable of accurately defining what they want. Bear asks for love, but the universe interprets this in its most primal destructive form. The movie suggests that the human emotions are too complex to be distilled into a single wish without losing the nuance that makes them healthy. And it kind of mirrors with the billions that Ian gets. It kind of reinforces that theme that shortcuts to happiness are inherently destructive. And, maybe a little bit of loneliness is a catalyst for evil. I think Bear's initial wish was born out of a vacuum of self-worth. He believes he is nothing without Nikki's validation. And even Nikki, post-wish, the ending where the spell is finally broken, only for Nikki to be left truly alone with her trauma, highlights the film's nihilistic view. Trying to escape loneliness through manipulation only leads to a more profound permanent isolation. And there's like a little bit of a distortion of the domestic. The film uses these odd culinary creations and contorted body language to turn the familiar domestic bliss into something repulsive. You got Nikki's attempts to be a loving partner are grotesque. She made a sandwich from his dead cat. She's over-indexing on affection until it becomes violent. It subverts the happily ever after ending for a traditional, from traditional romances, showing that when romantic expectations are stripped of genuine human connection, they become mechanical and terrifying. So I'm going to say right here, Obsession is a 5 out of 5 masterpiece that left me wanting to take a long cold shower. It takes the nice guy trope, puts it on an operating table, and dissects it without anesthesia. Curry Barker has proven that he isn't just a YouTube director, he's a master of tension who understands that the scariest thing in the world isn't a ghost in a corner, it's the sweet guy who thinks he's entitled to your soul. The film doesn't just give us a monster, it reminds us that the most dangerous thing in the world is a lonely man with a shortcut. The performances are what really anchor the nightmare. Michael Johnston makes you feel that awkward anxiety right up until it turns maybe a little toxic. And Inde Navarrette is a revelation. The way she moves, that glitchy physicality, those moments when the real Nikki comes through, it's the most disturbing thing I've seen on screen in a long time. It's a thrilling, scary, anxiety-riddled masterpiece that actually has something to say about the uglier layers of our culture. And Barker is taking over the Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise next, and if he brings even half of this psychological cruelty and framing expertise to Leatherface, we are in for a very dark, very legendary run. Get to the theater, get sandwiched between two jumping strangers, and see this one before someone spoils that final twisted kiss for you. Check out one of these videos by my head, and thanks for watching if you made it all the way through, and I'll see you next time.